Next come to the venous sinuses of dura mater. Venous sinuses are the venous spaces which are enclosed between the two layers of dura mater, outer endothelial and inner meningeal layer. Outer endothelial and inner meningeal layer, these are attached to one another, but at some places these get separated to enclose a venous channel within them, that is known as the venous sinus. Outer wall of the sinus, it is formed by endothelial layer of dura mater, and inner wall is formed by the meningeal layer of dura mater. So this is the diagram showing only the fold of the dura mater, and this is the cranial venous sinus present within it. Outer wall of the sinus is formed by endothelial layer, and inner wall is formed by the meningeal layer of dura mater. Inner lining of the venous sinus is formed by endothelium, means inner aspect of the outer wall, and inner aspect of the inner wall, it is formed by lining of endothelium or endothelial cells. Walls of these channels, these are deficient in muscles, means no muscular layer is present within the wall, and they have no valves present within them. These venous channels do not have any valve, so blood can flow in any direction, maybe in this direction or this direction, depending upon the gravity and the position of the head of a person. These venous sinuses, these drains the venous blood of brain, meninges and bones of skull. Cerebrospinal fluid is also absorbed into these venous sinuses. These cranial venous sinuses communicate with the extracranial veins, means the veins present outside the skull, with the help of emissary veins. Emissary veins are small communicating veins that connect intracranial venous channels with the extracranial veins. So emissary veins help to equalize the pressure of venous blood within the intracranial venous sinuses and extracranial veins. There are total 23 venous sinuses, of which 8 are paired and 7 are unpaired, and we will discuss them one by one in detail. So first comes to paired venous sinuses. First sinus is the cavernous sinus. Cavernous sinuses are 2 in number, present on both sides of the body of sphenoid bone. Each cavernous sinus is a large venous space situated in middle cranial fossa. Its interior is divided into a large number of spaces or caverns by trabeculae. So these partitions are known as trabeculae and these spaces are known as caverns. So that is why its name is cavernous sinus. These trabeculae are more prominent in dead persons than in living persons. Boundaries of a sinus. Sinus is having 6 boundaries: anterior boundary, posterior boundary, lateral boundary or lateral wall, and medial boundary or medial wall. And roof, that is the superior boundary, and floor is the inferior boundary. Floor come in touch with the bones of middle cranial fossa. Anteriorly, the sinus extends up to the medial end of superior orbital fissure. So this is the area of superior orbital fissure. Posteriorly, up to the apex of petrous temporal bone. So posterior aspect of the sinus, it extends up to this bony part. This is the apical part of petrous temporal bone. Sinus is about 2 cm long and 1 cm wide. Relations of cavernous sinus. Superior relations. Superior to the cavernous sinus are present optic chiasma and optic tract. So where here in this diagram we can see these are the 2 optic nerves which are passing through the optic canal. So when these leave the optic canal, these optic nerve, these cross with each other. Some fibers of or medial fibers of one optic nerve crosses with the medial fibers of the other optic nerve and form a cross-like structure on the superior aspect of the cavernous sinus. So optic chiasma is present superior to cavernous sinus. This picture is showing the inferior surface of brain and the nerves which are present in relation to the inferior surface of brain. This is olfactory nerve, this is optic nerve, and this is the optic chiasma which is formed by the two optic nerves. This inferior surface of brain lies in touch with or in close relation to the base of the skull. So cavernous sinus is present between the base of the skull and the inferior surface of the brain. In this manner, we can say inferior surface of brain is related to superior surface of cavernous sinus. So these structures come in relation with superior surface of the roof of the cavernous sinus. So superior relations of cavernous sinus are, first is optic chiasma, then optic tract, that is the continuation of optic nerve behind the optic chiasma, then olfactory tract, this is olfactory tract. Internal carotid artery is not present here, but it also passes in this area from the superior aspect of the cavernous sinus. And anterior perforated substance. This is the anterior perforated substance in which we can see these small perforations. It is present between the optic tract and the olfactory tract. Lateral limb of this olfactory tract. So this quadrangular area is known as anterior perforated substance, present in superior relation to the cavernous sinus. Inferior relations of cavernous sinus. So here we can see this is cavernous sinus 1 and this is another cavernous sinus. Inferior to it lies a foramen in the base of the skull, that is known as foramen lacerum. And second relation is the junction of body of sphenoid and greater wing of sphenoid. So this is the area of body of sphenoid bone over which this pituitary gland is present, and this is greater wing. So junction of both these bones, body of sphenoid and greater wing, lies in this area below the cavernous sinus. So these come in inferior relation to the cavernous sinus. Medial relation is hypophysis cerebri. So to both the cavernous sinuses, medial relation is the pituitary gland, and also the sphenoidal air sinuses which are present, which are two small cavities present posterior to the fossa of pituitary gland. Next comes to lateral relation. So this is pituitary gland. On both the sides of pituitary gland in this area there is presence of cavernous sinus inferior to the inferior surface of brain. So this is the area of cavernous sinus, and lateral to the cavernous sinus this temporal lobe of the brain is visible. This is temporal lobe of the brain. And this medial most part of the temporal lobe, this area, this is known as uncus. So temporal lobe of brain along with its part, that is uncus, that lies in lateral relation to the cavernous sinus, which is present here in this area. Inferolaterally, mandibular nerve is also present in relation to the cavernous sinus. So this is trigeminal ganglion. It gave three branches: ophthalmic branch, maxillary branch, and mandibular branch. This mandibular branch passes inferiorly and laterally. So it comes in the inferolateral relation to the cavernous sinus. And other two branches, these passes through the lateral wall of the sinus itself. In this diagram, we can see that this is the ophthalmic nerve and this is maxillary nerve crossing through the lateral wall of the sinus, but this is mandibular division or mandibular nerve which passes lateral and inferior to the cavernous sinus. Anteriorly, the sinus is related to the superior orbital fissure and the apex of the orbit. And posteriorly, the sinus is related to the apex of petrous temporal bone, which is visible here. and it is also related to the part of midbrain known as crus cerebri, which lies in this area. Structures passing through the lateral wall of the sinus. The structures are present from above downwards in the manner. First is the oculomotor nerve. Oculomotor nerve is the anterior-most structure crossing through the lateral wall. In the anterior aspect of the sinus, this nerve divides into two branches, superior division and inferior division, which leaves the sinus by passing through the superior orbital fissure. This is superior orbital fissure. These two branches of this nerve passes out of the sinus through the superior orbital fissure. Second structure is the trochlear nerve. Trochlear nerve, it crosses superficial to the oculomotor nerve and enters into the orbit by passing through this superior orbital fissure. Next is ophthalmic nerve. Within the sinus, this ophthalmic nerve, they give three branches: lacrimal nerve, frontal nerve and nasociliary nerve. Fourth content is maxillary nerve. Maxillary nerve crosses through the lateral wall of the sinus. Then, after leaving the lateral wall, it passes through the foramen rotundum, which is present in the base of the skull, and then it enters into the pterygopalatine fossa. So, third nerve, fourth nerve, and two branches of the fifth cranial nerve, these passes through the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus, and this is trigeminal ganglion. Trigeminal ganglion, along with its dural cave or dural sheath, it is also present in the posterior part of lateral wall of the sinus. Structures passing through the medial aspect of the sinus. First structure is internal carotid artery. So artery passes through the medial aspect of the sinus, and moreover the external surface of the artery, it is covered by network of nerves and veins. So that network of nerve and vein also passes through the medial aspect of sinus along with the internal carotid artery. Abducent nerve also accompanies the internal carotid artery and present in inferolateral aspect of the artery. These structures which are crossing through the lateral wall or the medial aspect of the sinus, these are separated from this venous blood within the sinus by a layer of endothelial cells which surround each structure externally, that is crossing through the sinus. Means endothelial lining act as a barrier between the venous blood in the sinus and these structures, may be it vessel or nerve. Tributaries or incoming channels of the cavernous sinus. First of all, from the orbit, it receives superior ophthalmic vein, inferior ophthalmic vein, and central vein of the retina. It may drain directly into the cavernous sinus or may first drain into the superior ophthalmic vein. From the brain, it receives superficial middle cerebral vein and inferior cerebral veins from the temporal lobe. From the meninges, it receives sphenoparietal sinus. Sphenoparietal sinus is the sinus related with sphenoid bone and the parietal bone. So in this area, this is the area of lesser wing of sphenoid bone, and this is the area of the parietal bone. So from both these areas, this sinus, sphenoparietal sinus, is receiving the venous blood and drains into cavernous sinus. Second is the frontal trunk of middle meningeal vein. This middle meningeal vein, frontal trunk, may drain directly into the cavernous sinus, or first it combines with the sphenoparietal sinus, then drains into the sinus, or it may take some other route. This frontal trunk may pass out of the skull through the foramen ovale and drains into the pterygoid plexus, that is extracranial structure. Then communications of the cavernous sinus, means The venous blood of the cavernous sinus is drained further into which vessels? So firstly, we have discussed about the tributaries of the sinus itself, means from where this sinus is receiving the venous blood, and now its communications, means further the blood is going to which vessel. Firstly, this cavernous sinus, it communicates with the transverse sinus. This is transverse sinus with the help of this connecting link known as superior petrosal sinus, present along the superior border of petrous temporal bone. Second structure is it communicates with the internal jugular vein. Internal jugular vein is the continuation of this sigmoid sinus. Sigmoid sinus, when leaves the skull, it forms the internal jugular vein, or it continues in the form of internal jugular vein. So this cavernous sinus communicates with internal jugular vein with the help of this sinus which is present here. It is inferior petrosal sinus. Cavernous sinus communicates with the pterygoid plexus of veins which is present outside the skull with the help of these emissary veins. These emissary veins, these unite both these structures by passing through the foramen ovale, foramen lacerum and emissary sphenoidal foramen. Cavernous sinus communicates with this facial vein. This is facial vein with the help of superior ophthalmic vein. So first of all, blood from here passes to superior ophthalmic vein, then it reaches the supraorbital vein, and then it passes further to the facial vein. So both structures are having connection with the help of this superior ophthalmic vein. Right and left cavernous sinus, these communicate with one another also with the help of connecting links, that is known as anterior intercavernous sinus and posterior intercavernous sinus. This basilar plexus of veins also act as an connecting link between the right and left cavernous sinus. This part of the bone is the basilar part of occipital bone. So the network of this veins which are present in this area, that is known as basilar plexus. All these communications of the cavernous sinus, these are valveless and blood can flow in any direction through them. Factors which help in expulsion of the blood from the sinus, these are, first is pulsation of expansile pulsation of the internal carotid artery, means during each beating of the heart, artery expand then contract. So the expansion of the artery, it pushes the blood to the vessels which are attached to the cavernous sinus. Second factor is gravity. Gravity pulls the blood towards the vessels which are lying at lower plane than the cavernous sinus. It is position of head. So flow of blood from the sinus to the vessels, it also depend upon the position. So blood flow towards that side in which head is tilted. Applied anatomy related to cavernous sinus. First is thrombus formation within the cavernous sinus. Thrombus means a clot of blood that has formed within the vessel wall. So if any such clot has formed within the cavernous sinus, it may give rise to various symptoms. Thrombus formation in the cavernous sinus may occur due to any infection in the dangerous area of the face. Dangerous area of face is the area of upper lip, lateral aspect of the nose and this medial aspect of the cheek. In this area, if any boil or pustule occurs, its infection may spread to pterygoid plexus of veins, because the venous blood of this area, it is drained by deep facial vein into pterygoid venous plexus, and this plexus ultimately drain its blood into the cavernous sinus. So infection from this area, it may spread to the cavernous sinus. Symptoms that arises due to infection of this or thrombus formation of the sinus are nervous symptoms, which includes pain in the area of distribution of nerves which passes through the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus. So these nerves are, first is ophthalmic nerve. Ophthalmic nerve, severe pain in the eye and forehead is felt because of irritation of the ophthalmic nerve. Involvement of third, fourth and sixth cranial nerves results in paralysis of the muscles to which these nerves supply. Venous symptoms include edema of the eyelids and cornea and root of the nose with exophthalmos due to congestion of orbital veins. Exophthalmos is a condition in which eyeballs become prominent. Second condition is pulsatile exophthalmos. It is a condition in which communication between the cavernous sinus and the internal carotid artery it develops due to any head injury. So when this happens, the arterial blood of internal carotid artery, it may drain into the cavernous sinus and it give a symptom that eyeball protrudes and pulsate with each heartbeat, and this condition is known as pulsating exophthalmos or pulsatile exophthalmos. Next sinus is superior sagittal sinus. Superior sagittal sinus occupies the upper convex attached margin of the falx cerebri. It begins anteriorly at the crista galli by the union of small meningeal veins. So small meningeal veins is combined together to forms the superior sagittal sinus. It also communicate with the veins of the frontal sinus. So this is frontal sinus which is visible here. These veins also communicate with the sinus, and occasionally it also receives the vein from the nose through the foramen caecum. Foramen caecum is present just anterior to this crista galli portion. Foramen caecum which connect the nose with anterior cranial fossa. So through that foramen, nasal bones, veins from the nose, these enter into the anterior cranial fossa and joins the beginning of superior sagittal sinus. In its anterior part, sinus is smaller in size, means its lumen is narrow, but as it progresses upwards and backwards, its lumen gets broader or sinus gets larger in size. Superior sagittal sinus is triangular in shape in cross section. So this is the choroidal section across the superior sagittal sinus and it appears triangular in shape. It ends near the internal occipital protuberance. So this is the area of internal occipital protuberance on the occipital bone. Here lies the posterior end of this superior sagittal sinus. In this diagram, this is superior sagittal sinus. So when it reaches its posterior end at the level of internal occipital protuberance, it turns to right side, and here it continues with the transverse sinus, or it continues in the form of right transverse sinus. In this area of internal occipital protuberance, transverse sinus of one side communicate with the transverse sinus of another side, as well as superior sagittal sinus and with other sinuses like straight sinus. This sinus which is running in this area, this is the straight sinus, and from lower aspect from this area of internal occipital crest, there is coming occipital sinus. So that occipital sinus also communicate with this area, with the sinus. So this union or communication of different sinuses in this area is known as confluence of sinuses. So here two transverse sinuses, superior sagittal sinus, this straight sinus and occipital sinus, these communicate. Interior of superior sagittal sinus shows opening of superior cerebral veins. These are superior cerebral veins opening into the sinus. Opening of venous lacunae. These are the venous lacunae. This area, venous lacuna. These are opening into the sinus. Arachnoid villi and arachnoid granulations. Arachnoid villi are also projecting into the venous lacuna. Then in the inferior angle of the sinus, we can see numerous fibrous bands are present in this area, which are crossing from one side to another side in the sinus. Tributaries of superior sagittal sinus. Superior sagittal sinus, it is receiving the superior cerebral veins. So these are the two superior cerebral veins opening directly into the sinus. Parietal emissary veins. These are the two emissary veins, and these are parietal emissary veins crossing the parietal bone and opening into the sinus. Then venous lacunae. Venous lacunae first receives the diploic vein. This is diploic vein and this is the meningeal vein. So these two veins first open into the lacuna, then these open into the lacuna open into the sinus. So what is venous lacuna? Venous lacuna is a lateral pouch or diverticulum like structure present in the superior sagittal sinus, and it is also having these protruded arachnoid villi within it. Arachnoid villi pour the absorbed CSF or cerebrospinal fluid into the venous sinus. Meningeal veins means the veins which are carrying the venous blood from other meninges. Arachnoid mater, pia mater. These drain their blood firstly into the lacuna. And diploic vein also first opens into the lacuna. Diplo is the area between outer table of the skull bone and inner table of the skull bone. So this dotted area that is shown, this is known as diplo, and the veins which are draining venous blood from this area are known as diploic veins. So diploic veins drain into superior sagittal sinus through lacunae. So throughout the length of superior sagittal sinus, three lacunae are present on one side and 3 on the other side. And last tributary of the superior sagittal sinus that is occasionally present, it is a vein from nose that opens into the anterior end of superior sagittal sinus. So this vein passes from nose to this anterior cranial fossa through the foramen caecum present anterior to the crista galli. Applied anatomy related to superior sagittal sinus. First condition is the thrombus formation within the sinus, that is clotting of blood within the sinus. So this clot may be formed due to spread of infection from the nose through a vein passing through the foramen caecum. Also the infection may spread from scalp through emissary veins, and from the infection of diplo, the thrombus formation may occur through diploic veins. This causes increase in the intracranial pressure of cerebrospinal fluid within the sinus. This is because the absorption of CSF get affected. In normal conditions, CSF, which is circulated in the subarachnoid space, it is absorbed by the arachnoid granulations and arachnoid villi, and these structures absorb the CSF from this area and drain it into the sinus. Thrombus formation within the sinus affect these absorptive structures also. so leads to defective absorption of CSF. So that is why CSF pressure within the subarachnoid space it increased, and also within the ventricles of the brain pressure of CSF also increases. This leads to a condition known as hydrocephalus. Thrombosis of the sinus also leads to congestion of blood within the superior cerebral veins, and because of its congestion, the symptoms which arises are delirium and convulsions. Delirium is a condition in which a person speak or think in a crazy way. So this condition is related to some illness. And convulsion is a medical condition where body muscle contract and relax rapidly and repeatedly, resulting in uncontrolled action of the body, like in epilepsy. Third condition that may arise due to thrombus formation in the sinus, that is paraplegia. Paraplegia means paralysis of the lower limbs and also the perineal area. Next comes to inferior sagittal sinus. Like superior sagittal sinus, inferior sagittal sinus is also an unpaired sinus. Inferior sagittal sinus is a small venous channel present in posterior 2/3 portion of inferior concave margin of falx cerebri. Here at the end it joins with the great cerebral vein. This small vein is visible, known as great cerebral vein, and forms the straight sinus. Great cerebral vein is a large venous channel. This great cerebral vein is formed by union of many internal cerebral veins. So internal cerebral veins drain the venous blood of deeper areas of the cerebrum and combine together to form the great cerebral vein. By combining with inferior sagittal sinus, great cerebral vein forms the straight sinus. Next comes to straight sinus. Straight sinus lies in the median plane at the junction of falx cerebri and tentorium cerebelli. It is formed by the union of inferior sagittal sinus with the great cerebral vein. Great cerebral vein is visible in the form of a cut vessel in this structure. It ends at the level of internal occipital protuberance by continuing in the form of transverse sinus, usually the left transverse sinus. Right transverse sinus is the continuation of the superior sagittal sinus. Apart from inferior sagittal sinus and great cerebral vein, this sinus also receive superior cerebellar veins which are coming from cerebellum and draining the venous blood of cerebellum, which is present below the tentorium cerebelli. So here we can see this left transverse sinus. It is the continuation of the straight sinus. Next sinus is transverse sinus. Transverse sinuses are large in size and these are paired sinus. Right transverse sinus is larger in size as compared to the left sinus. It is situated in the posterior part of attached margin of the tentorium cerebelli. Each sinus extends from internal occipital protuberance to the posterior-inferior angle of parietal bone. So here lies the posterior-inferior angle of parietal bone. This is parietal area and here is the angle, and this is also the area of posterior-inferior angle of parietal bone. So up to this area both the transverse sinuses extend. This area corresponds to the base of the menstrual process also, and here this sinus it bends downwards and become the sigmoid sinus. means in this angle the transverse sinus continue in the form of sigmoid sinus. Tributaries of transverse sinus. So in the diagram here we can see this is transverse sinus and it is receiving superior petrosal sinus. This is superior petrosal sinus connecting transverse sinus with the cavernous sinus. Inferior cerebral veins which are not visible in the diagram but we can understand by the position of the cerebrum. This is the area where cerebrum is located and here lies the occipital lobe of cerebrum. So from the inferior aspect of the occipital lobe, or we can say inferior aspect of the other parts of the cerebrum, the blood vessels, inferior cerebral blood vessels come and drain into the transverse sinus. Inferior cerebellar veins. So this is the area of the cerebellum and to close contact of this transverse sinus comes the inferior surface of cerebellum as well. So from the inferior surface of cerebellum, inferior cerebellar veins reaches the transverse sinus and drains into it. Posterior temporal diploic veins drain into the transverse sinus, and last is the inferior anastomotic vein. This is inferior anastomotic vein which is also draining into the transverse sinus. Inferior anastomotic vein is one of the several superficial veins which run on the surface of cerebrum. Next sinus is sigmoid sinus. Sigmoid sinus is also a paired sinus. Right and left sigmoid sinuses are there. It is the direct continuation of transverse sinus. Its shape is S-shaped. So that is why it is known as sigmoid sinus. It extends from posterior inferior angle of the parietal bone to the posterior part of jugular foramen, where it forms the superior bulb of internal jugular vein. So here we can see the last part of the sigmoid sinus. Here lies a foramen known as jugular foramen. So when this sinus, sigmoid sinus, crosses through the jugular foramen and comes out of the skull, it becomes the internal jugular vein. At the beginning of internal jugular vein, there is presence of a dilatation known as superior bulb of internal jugular vein. So this superior bulb lies in the jugular notch which lies very close to jugular foramen. When this sinus crosses through this area, this is the area of mastoid process also, it grooves the mastoid part of temporal bone. Within the mastoid bone lies mastoid antrum and the mastoid air cells. So here the sinus is separated from mastoid antrum and air cells by a very thin plate of bone. So infections from the mastoid bone may spread into blood which is present in the sigmoid sinus, and through the blood it is carried to distant areas. Tributaries of sigmoid sinus. Sigmoid sinus receive the emissary veins from the mastoid process. So mastoid emissary vein drain into it. Then condylar emissary veins. Condylar emissary veins are coming from or draining the condyles of the occipital bone. So condylar emissary vein also drain into the sigmoid sinus. Sigmoid sinus also has communication with the occipital sinus. So this also drain into the sigmoid sinus. Cerebellar veins which are coming from cerebellum present in this fossa, that are also drained by the sigmoid sinus. Internal auditory vein which forms in the internal ear. drains into sigmoid sinus, or it may drain into the transverse sinus, or it may drain also into the superior petrosal sinus. Applied anatomy related to sigmoid sinus. Thrombosis of the sigmoid sinus is always occur after the infection of the middle ear cavity or the Mastoid process. So infections of the middle ear, which leads to otitis media, and the infection of Mastoid process known as mastoiditis, these should be taken seriously, otherwise these may cause grave problems. Spread of infection or thrombosis from sigmoid sinus to transverse sinus, and then from transverse sinus to the superior sagittal sinus, may cause impaired CSF drainage, which leads to development of hydrocephalus. Such hydrocephalus that is associated with ear infections is known as otitic hydrocephalus, means it is having its origin in the ear. Next sinus is occipital sinus. It is a small sinus and unpaired sinus. It lies in the attached margin of the falx cerebelli and run in close relation to internal occipital crest. It begins near the margin of the foramen magnum and ends in the confluence of sinuses. Next sinus is sphenoparietal sinus. Right and left sphenoparietal sinuses run along the free margin of lesser wing of the sphenoid bone. These drain into the anterior aspect of cavernous sinus. Each sinus may receive the frontal trunk of middle meningeal vein. Superior petrosal sinus run along the upper border of vitreotemporal bone. It is also the area of anterior part of attached margin of tentorium cerebelli. This sinus connects the cavernous sinus with the transverse sinus. Next sinus is inferior petrosal sinus. Inferior petrosal sinus lies in petro-occipital fissure. Petro-occipital fissure means the junction of vitreotemporal bone. This is vitreotemporal bone and this is the occipital bone. So both join at the petro-occipital fissure, and in this fissure lies this small sinus known as inferior petrosal sinus. Inferior petrosal sinus joins the posterior aspect of cavernous sinus with the superior bulb of internal jugular vein. Internal jugular vein is present outside the skull. Inferior petrosal and superior petrosal sinuses are paired sinuses. Next is basilar plexus of veins. Basilar plexus of veins is a network of veins present over the clivus of skull. Clivus is also known as basilar part of the occipital bone. So over this clivus there is presence of this network of veins. Basilar plexus connects the two inferior petrosal sinuses, and itself it communicates with the internal vertebral venous plexus, that is a network of veins present within the vertebral canal. Next are the middle meningeal veins. These are two in number. Middle meningeal vein is having two trunks, frontal trunk and parietal trunk. Frontal trunk is also known as anterior trunk. Parietal trunk is also known as posterior trunk. Frontal trunk drains into the cavernous sinus directly, or first it drains into sphenoparietal sinus, then drains into cavernous sinus. or it may pass through the foramen ovale and leaves the skull and drains into the pterygoid plexus of veins present in infratemporal fossa. So frontal trunk of the middle meningeal vein is having intracranial or extracranial drainage. Posterior trunk or parietal trunk of middle meningeal vein, it passes through the foramen spinosum and leaves the skull and drains into the pterygoid venous plexus. Middle meningeal vein lies more closer to the skull bones. So during injury to the head in fractures of the skull bones, middle meningeal vein is more prone for get injured as compared to middle meningeal artery. Next are anterior and posterior intercavernous sinus. Anterior intercavernous sinus connects the anterior part of two cavernous sinuses, and posterior intercavernous sinus connect the posterior part of two cavernous sinuses. These sinuses pass through the diaphragma sellae. Diaphragma sellae is a circular fold of dura mater present over the fossa for pituitary gland. Anterior intercavernous sinus is present in front of the infundibulum of pituitary gland, and posterior intercavernous sinus is present behind the infundibulum of pituitary gland. Infundibulum or infundibular stalk is a small tubular structure which connects the posterior lobe of pituitary gland to the hypothalamus. So we have completed with the venous sinuses that are contained within the two layers of dura mater. Then next comes to the arachnoid mater, which is the middle meninx out of the three meninges. It is shown in this purple color in the diagram. It is a thin transparent membrane that loosely surrounds the brain tissue without dipping into its sulci. So these are the sulci of the brain, in which pia mater layer is visible dipping down, but arachnoid is bridging all the irregularities of the brain tissue. Between arachnoid mater and the pia mater, there is presence of subarachnoid space, which is a wider space. This space is traversed by a network of arachnoid trabeculae which give it sponge-like appearance. Subarachnoid space contains CSF and large blood vessels of brain. Cranial nerves also passes through this space. Arachnoid matter is pushed into the lateral sulcus by lesser wing of the sphenoid bone. It is also pushed into median longitudinal fissure by falx cerebri. Then innermost meninx is pia mater. Pia mater is a thin membrane which closely invests the brain, and it dips into various sulci and irregularities present on the surface of the brain. Pia mater further consists of two layers, epipia and pia glia. Epipia is present towards the outer aspect, and pia glia is present over the brain tissue, means it is closely related to the brain tissue. It is a vascular layer. It is pierced by blood vessels for the supply of brain and spinal cord.